Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live Teacher Uses of AI. I'm Kelly McNeil, and I'm excited to have you here for this conversation brought to you by HP and Digital Promise about how AI is shaping classroom learning. In the background, I'm joined by my amazing colleagues, Jasmine, Amanda, Rebecca, and Nick. They'll be keeping the technology running smoothly and monitoring your chat. I'm especially thrilled to be joined by Jaime Donally, a former pre K through eighth grade math teacher turned technology integration specialist, author, and immersive learning advocate. I've always been inspired by her work in helping educators bring emerging technologies into their classrooms. AI is rapidly evolving in education, offering new opportunities to personalize learning, streamline teaching workflows, and spark creativity. But with all this innovation, there are also important considerations around ethics, accessibility, and meaningful implementation. In today's session, we'll explore how educators are practically using AI in their classrooms, the challenges and opportunities AI presents for teachers and students, and tips for getting started and staying ahead in this fast changing space. We'd love for you to be a part of the conversation. Drop your thoughts and questions in the chat. We'll be checking in throughout the session. Jamie, I'm so excited to chat with you today. To kick things off, can you share a little about your journey and what excites you most about AI in education right now?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Kelly. Excited to be here with you again. I was a classroom teacher. So I went, from the classroom working with students, seeing the enthusiasm of using different technologies. Some of the students that I worked with on the math side maybe hated math and didn't feel very successful. But when you brought in technology, just sparked that enthusiasm. And I got to see kind of the mix of the two really in bringing a new dynamic to the classroom. So in that, later became an instructional technologist and working with teachers, how to integrate technology, what kind of technologies were out there available, and just really kind of working with teachers like I did with students, right? Encouraging them, supporting them, just trying to offer the best resources possible. And in the process, really got this enthusiasm, crazy enthusiasm for immersive tech. So working with augmented and virtual reality, and no doubt, AI has been a part of that journey 100%. Even if I didn't necessarily call out the AI every time, AI has been a huge aspect of what has brought AR and VR to the point it's at today. So it's been really cool. I get to work with a lot of different people and sometimes even companies and how they're bringing this technology into the classroom. So it's been a really great journey.
Awesome. Well, so thank you so much for being here. And we'll go ahead and jump into our questions. To get started, from your experience, how do you see AI transforming teaching and learning in K 12?
Yeah, I think that really there are several aspects of that, right? The classroom teacher is getting a resource that really has never been there in the past like it. It's kind of like us introducing maybe a smart board back in the day when we never had anything like that, something so visible and interactive to bring into the classroom. And now, of course, throughout the transitions, AI, I think, has more of an influence than something like a single device, if you will.
Mhm.
But I do think that it is a resource that teachers have access to that really has sparked some debate and some enthusiasm as well, and certainly has been changing things up. It's been shifting the gears. If you go to any tech conference right now for education, you're certainly going to see AI as the top spotlight, what's happening with it. So I do think that there are a ton of opportunities to shake things up. I hope it's for the better. I hope that, the way that it is used in the future is something that we certainly adapt our best practices like we would with any resource, and leverage the tools effectively that is going to help support our learners and our educators. But some of that's to be seen. Some of the mistakes that we're making along the way, we're learning from, and it's been one of those journeys that I think teachers are going to have to go through. It's not something we can stick our head in the sand and say it doesn't exist, because it's certainly here.
For sure. Yeah, no, I appreciate that perspective on the fact that it's here, it's powerful, but that healthy sort of caution about, and how do we learn from what's happening. So it'll definitely be interesting to see. So let's talk a little bit about, practical applications, and ways that we do think that we can see it actually in the classroom. So, in terms of incorporating it into, um, I know I thought about these and I wrote down lesson planning, but I don't want to just restrict it to that. Really, just like, enhancing student learning. I'm just gonna just bundle it on that. What are the best ways that you think to incorporate AI into the classroom, into K-12 to enhance student learning?
Yeah, I think that honestly, the way that I have always looked at AI is an inspiration, right? I might be inspired to go learn something new. I might be inspired to dig deeper. I might be inspired to extend what my initial idea was. But I think ultimately, in every aspect of using AI for myself and what I see for educators, is really something that it helps you expand beyond where you were at, right? I think some of the issues that we might face is, starting from there and saying, I don't know anything about this, but this is where I'm starting at AI. So you tell me. And I think that there's certainly some caution there. But I do think for educators to be able to leverage AI in the classroom, there's going to be a way of you saying, this is what I know. This is what we need. This is some things that I've tried, but we need to expand beyond this. This is something that I'm struggling with. We can all reflect back on lessons if you want to, if we want to talk about lessons that have not been as successful as others, right? So I'm like, why do students every year after year struggle with this proportionality, let's say, this topic? And it's like, man, I need to offer something different. I need to expand my knowledge. I need to really dig deeper. We need to give maybe some basic foundation before we get to this place. So, as a teacher, you're constantly looking for how to refine, what needs to be presented to the students, but then also what they need to take in turn and be, successful in life. So being able to take some of those concepts and how am I leveraging AI, whether that being a chatbot and offering some resources, or whether that being a program that offers kind of details, specifics, kind of a scripted opportunity there. If it's helping to present, visual materials like images or presentation slides. So in all of those factors, AI helping to expand what the students need, what the students are interested in, engaging them and capturing at that level. But then essentially you're saying, provide some ideas. Like, how can this be presented? What are the ways that I can do this differently? How do I really make sure that that foundation is there prior to? So you're essentially getting inspired with new ideas in ways that we might be kind of, stuck in our ways, or we might have we might just be tired and we're like, oh my gosh, I cannot think of another thing. I got a million IEPs to work on, and I have all these meetings and the students, and we have this benchmark exam. So all the things that we're constantly having to evaluate, but then at the end of the day, having a resource that just, again, sparks those ideas and says, here's some things that maybe you haven't thought about. Let's think outside the box.
I love that. And I often refer to AI, or I work with different GPTs and different LLMs and as a thought partner. And that's exactly what I'm doing, is trying to
Mhm.
get new, different ideas. And I really appreciate how you pointed out coming into it with already having some knowledge about what you're asking. You don't want to go and ask it, what is this, proportionality? You need to come in as understanding those concepts,
Right.
because, we know it cannot always say the truth. But I think it's fantastic
Mm.
in terms of providing so many different interesting ideas that, like you said, we just probably wouldn't have thought of otherwise. That's great. So, we all know you're very innovative with technology, and I love how you show teachers fun ways to use those innovative technologies, from, again, like when we were on a webinar together, to I know you go to the conferences and I've seen you do all the fun things that you do with AR and VR. What do you think is something really innovative with AI that teachers could use in their classrooms?
Absolutely. I think the way that I like to present augmented and virtual reality is really thinking about where our limitations are in our physical space and how spatial learning is going to capture them in a way that would be impossible without the technology. So, being able to bring them to places is certainly there, but then being able to interact in those spaces, I think, is also there. How do they engage on a personal level? But I also think that when it moves into the augmented reality space of the adding that visual, so beyond just what I'm hearing this chatbot tell me, how is that effective for me and what I'm seeing around me and in my real space? So how is that spatial learning going to impact our students of the future? I think is really I think that's where things are really going to explode, because typing something into a chatbot is one thing, but actually being in a real world situation at your job or in your classroom or walking around the grocery store and having that information not just to be typed into a phone, but now being able to visually see those interactions and engagements in real time in your space. I think about what that looks like when it does apply to augmented reality and how we're going to be able to not just hear those things happening, but visually see those things and engage with data in a way that we've not had access to, at least not visually, right? It takes a while and it disconnects us from our reality. But I do think that the future of all of these technologies are going to be real time, seamless, integrated into our daily lives without interruption. And that's where I really see a future of for our education space as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can't wait to see what that looks like. I think that's gonna be really, really interesting.
Me too. I'm
Um,
like, Meta, come on, let's talk.
uh, so what is one way you've seen AI used by teachers that either you would like to try? I know you're on you're a pioneer, so you probably already tried it, or if you've already tried it, or something you haven't seen teachers using but would like to see them using.
Yeah, I think that, the tools are going to come and go. I think that the tools are going to constantly change. And that in itself is not what teachers need to be focusing on right now. I would love to see them actually taking any resource that is available as it consistently changes and leveraging what is beneficial for our students. But I also want to see that our teachers have good digital citizenship skills to know how to function in this space, but not violate, privacy concerns for our students, for themselves, for their organization, all of those factors. So I would love to see really a balance of these conversations happening to where any type of advancement, any emerging tech that's coming out, that there is a balance with decisions that is protecting our students just as much as innovating our students, right? Bringing that balance together and having those discussions, I think, are going to be critical. I also would love to see more of our departments coming together to plan. I think that oftentimes you have like your innovator group, well, technologists, if you will, that are saying, hey, do all this, do everything this. And then you have these other departments that are like, hey, that's bad. IT's like, don't, you can do none of that. And then you have curriculum saying that does not fit into what you're supposed to be doing currently. And then you have administrators saying, what about your scores? Where are we going to see this? And so you have these different departments with different dynamics of what their expectations are. But I think what really should be done, and I do think that some school districts have come together. Chicago Public Schools is a great example of this, coming together, mapping this out collaboratively, and then saying, we're gonna talk about these issues, but we're gonna address the expectations of using these kinds of tools, what are goals and objectives for using these tools. We're constantly going back to that. And how is that benefiting and protecting our students simultaneously? So I think that in all of those things, that is what I would love to see, because the tool itself is unbelievable. But we are also privileged with information that really should not be leveraged in a tool like this. So being able to have some accountability, if you will, from your organization or from your district or from your state, whatever, is being set up, because I know that is happening across the states as well. But having that accountability to work together and seeing the benefit across the board where everybody's working together.
No, I completely agree with that. And I noticed we actually have a question coming in from our audience. It has to do with starting point, and so I just wanted the audience to know we are going to get to those questions, and I have a starting point question a little bit later. So rest assured, and thank you for sharing your questions. We will get to those shortly. The next one I want to ask, because you started to touch a little bit upon, we've talked about challenges and things to be aware of. So we're gonna go just a little bit into like ethics and privacy, because we know that that's something that's for sure on everyone's mind. What should educators look for when evaluating AI tools to ensure they align with ethical standards and school policies? You mentioned, school and district. How can they ensure the AI tools that they're using comply with data protection policies? Oh, I think we actually lost Jamie. I saw oh, there you
I'm
are.
back. Good
Technology.
technology. Yeah, that's a great question. I think that they need to have conversations with the departments in their organization. So, asking IT to open things up just for the sake of innovation without discussing, what are the potential risks of opening up a site like this. Are they prepared? So that do they have the training necessary to know how to effectively use these tools in a safe way? I work for a company that really gives access based upon the necessities of the title, right? Of what you should have access to, you have access to at the right time. And I think that is also going to be in play when we're talking about having access to these tools. Opening up the floodgates to everybody is not the best approach. But I do think when you are determining how to move forward, I'm interested, I want to do this, who do I talk to? I think you're going to want to talk to your curriculum team. You're going to want your curriculum team to have communication with your IT team. You're going to want them to be talking to your administrative team, and ultimately that's going to be you potentially being the first to pitch this idea. You might have to be the person to say, this is important for our students to have access to. This is important for us as educators to have access to. So how do we work around our policies within our organization? And typically there are certainly data privacy policies, and even some states have those types of things already in place. But you're going to find a limitation in what information can be given. And that's a great starting point. I think that's where they should be saying, okay, what information is appropriate? How do we protect these individuals in our organization, whether that be students or teachers, right? I should not be giving out any information within the organization without explicit directions to do so. So, AI is the same, say that, well, it's going somewhere and nobody sees that is actually pretty inaccurate. As a matter of fact, if you look up yourself on AI, you're probably going to learn a lot. I think I have a better bio through AI than anything I can ever write myself. But it's like, wow, how did they, how did that information ever get out there? But, collection of things that are calculated about you. And that is the future for our students too. So how are we making sure that that information that is out there is not something that we have given and we have delivered back to that machine to essentially leverage and populate for the future, good or bad, right? So I definitely think that there are aspects of that communication, that cycle of any type of tool you bring in, it should be a collaborative effort. And there you really do need to start with a team. And starting individually, you're going to run into a lot of problems. You're going to run into a lot of roadblocks, and you're potentially going to run into losing your job. And there are things that you need to just definitely cover yourself and your students, as well as your organization, from potential risks associated with that as well.
Yeah. Uh, fully get that. And I have another couple of questions coming in. One of them actually is it's an interesting question, and so it kind of about supporting staff. So I think I'm going to go ahead and ask this one, even though we're not at the question time quite just yet. But it's asking, how do we create the time for showing the advantages and then supporting staff to take the challenging path to embedding the use of technology in their day-to-day practice? This is it's an interesting it's interesting question. Like I have some thoughts about this too, but I want to know what do you think about that?
I think that we spend a lot of time on things that we don't necessarily have to spend time on with AI. Having the time to sit there and brainstorm a bunch of ideas for how I'm going to gamify my lesson to fully engage my students. I may not have to sit there and write it all out and have all these different conversations. And while all of that is good, I really could get inspired with new ideas by using AI for those things. The quantity of time that we spend on things that we would normally do in our Google search, for instance, looking for online resources or finding access to, printables, all of those things that we might already spend an enormous amount of time on. AI is populating those things in lightning speed immediately directed to you. Looking at a search engine is one thing. It's giving you a bunch of information and you're going to have to make sense of all of it. But using AI essentially narrows down that list significantly to be more targeted for the responses that you're looking for. So there are aspects of leveraging AI that is certainly going to eliminate the time that you would spend on those things. Do I think that's where you start? No, I definitely think that you do. You're the experts out there in the classroom. You know the things that are happening with your students. So you have all these years past experience and you're bringing those years and asking the machine, if you will, to essentially output something that's going to help refine that and inspire new ideas. So time-wise, I think that's one of the biggest advantages of using AI. That is probably where you're going to want to invest into this kind of technology in order to eliminate tasks that essentially require too much time. So I want to say when it comes to time, you're in a good place. You're going to want to invest into some professional development. You're going to want to make sure that your teachers are prepared and ready to go before you throw out any technology, but especially this technology. And it will certainly be a way to prevent unnecessary uses of time throughout the day. So, and as a matter of fact, you can go into a chat bot and ask, here's my daily calendar. How can I reduce this to essentially accomplish the same goals? I mean, it's pretty wild. Like, let me give you my calendar. Let's see what I can adjust here to make myself more productive. So there's so many ways that this technology could be used for time management and support. And no doubt in my mind that this is the right tool for that.
I love how you talked about if you've got this question about it, just ask AI. I have definitely done that myself where I'm thinking around something and I'm like, well, I have asked AI if I'm like, how would I use AI to do this? I've asked AI, how would I use AI to do this? And it's really interesting to have those sorts of conversations. We did have another question come in, and it sort of relates back to like policy, ethics, and privacy. So I'm going to ask this one. Someone asked specifically about another organization rubric, and I'm not familiar with the rubric or the organization. I do know lots of organizations have different rubrics. We have at Digital Promise have the AI literacy framework. I refer to this quite often in the work that I'm doing with educators, but just generically, we know there's a lot of AI rubrics out there. How would you say they either are or are not helpful, and like how might they be falling short, or how do you feel just about AI rubrics for educators? And
I don't think I've ever had an output of AI and used it exactly as it was. I think every time I've ever used it, and I use it a lot in my area. I work in marketing and I work in education on the ed tech side. And I will tell you that almost nearly everything that I'm working on, some way, shape, or form, AI has a piece to play. I don't think I've ever taken it verbatim. So starting from that piece and understanding that every tool is going to vary and every tool is getting refined in the process. Some might be a little bit farther ahead than others. But ultimately you're going to have an output that might be more, better looking. It might have more options for you to customize and refine. But ultimately, you're going to have an output out there and you're going to be able to go in and make decisions from there. And the important thing about creating any type of rubric that I think, I've created multiple times in a lot of different scenarios, but when I take those rubrics and I say, this is what I want to accomplish, I want to be really specific in what I'm looking to accomplish, right? So the more information I'm given, the better outcome we all know are going to populate. So when I'm looking at my input and saying, this is what I want, I may even throw in some things like, what other options have I not considered? What are some things that I need to extend or consider with my diverse population of students? So I might throw in some additional things that I haven't really thought through and I need to consider. I may not include everything, but it would help me kind of process and say yes or no. But when you're creating these rubrics, really refining your input, which just comes with practice. I think, understanding how to create a great prompt is something that you have just had experience in doing and seeing the great outputs, right? Doesn't mean it always is successful. It doesn't mean that every time you're going to have a perfect output, but I think the better you get at prompting, the better you're going to have it, those outputs. But at the end of the day, whatever you have as your output, I would strongly encourage you to over ask so that you have a lot of opportunity to crop out the things that don't work and to modify, to refine what you're looking for in your classroom. And so, you don't want to start small and then have to build and build and build, and then it's all disconnected. But you want to start off pretty massive and asking for a lot. And then it gives you a lot of opportunity to go in there and just chop up what isn't necessary at that point. So that would be my recommendation in using, rubrics. But I do think that, again, some tools might have better outputs today, but that doesn't mean anything about tomorrow. There's no one tool that does everything perfectly. Every tool has some disadvantages, and some do some really well, and then others kind of take a different approach and they do other things really well. So just knowing how to leverage the tools out there and make the best outputs possible.
For sure. Some of the key things that you said is um, we have to still make decisions. These things are rapidly changing. You mentioned that, like, what we are looking at right now versus next week versus next month. So as humans in the loop, I think is what we say. Like, there always should be a human in the loop making decisions, never just completely relying on one of these tools.
Mhm.
And of course, you said that not one of these tools is perfect. And I completely agree with that. I'm a big advocate in exploration, experimentation with different ones so that you can see, what's out there. So agree with that. Let's talk a little bit about some challenges. Some of them have sort of surfaced already a little bit without addressing them directly. But let's actually go into what do you think are some of the most common challenges that teachers face when they're adopting AI tools, and what are ways that you think we could minimize these challenges?
Yeah, I think I'll start at the end real quick.
Hmm.
I think that oftentimes we think we need to be an expert of everything, which is not true. We don't need to be an expert of everything AI to implement anything AI. So often I think that teachers feel overwhelmed by any new technology coming in. But if we can think about finding a resource and it being an effective resource for us, that's a win. Like, run with that win. You don't need to know every AI chatbot out there in order to use one chatbot. You don't have to have every rubric maker, if you will, out there to evaluate every single one before selecting one. again, there might be one that just doesn't hit the mark and it's missing something. So then you do a little bit of research and identify another one that's going to provide, more of the resource that you need. So that's really what I would say as starting out is, when you're getting started with this and saying, am I successful? How do I know if I'm going in the right direction? If you found a tool and it has helped support you as an educator, help your students understand the content deeper or engage in that content better, that's a win, and you need to take that win. So my recommendation is start small and expand as needed. You don't need to have an expertise in AI. So that really let those experts be those experts. But on your end, say, I am looking for this resource right now, and this is where my students are struggling. I always say with AR, VR, they're always like, what's the one tool? Well, there's not one tool. There's never one tool. Every classroom varies. But for you and your students and their circumstance, start with where they're struggling. So you're going to see the biggest impact with where they're really deficient. And me as an educator, where I'm deficient, I'm going to go and find the resources that are going to help fill that gap. Now, if they're getting solar system and they've gotten solar system all year and there are no gaps there and I've done that effectively, why am I going to go to AI for solar system? They're doing it well. Maybe there's some ideas that I might want to throw in there just to continue to expand that knowledge. But at the end of the day, I'm focused and targeted on the areas where my students are deficient. And I think that's where you're going to have the most success. But don't feel overwhelmed by it, because you don't need to know it all. You can know one and do it well and have a lot of success from that.
Yeah, for sure. There's another question that came in. This falls under the the ethics conversation, and I'm thinking about it before I ask it, because it's one that I'm figuring out how to phrase it. Because when we have so much information around us that's telling us, oh, this is the big worry with this technology, or this is the big worry with this technology. And I'm a person who has to verify a lot of times, because sometimes something that is said, it comes out that, well, it's not exactly the way it was presented, or we don't actually know. And to me, this question sort of falls under that. So I'm just going to preface it with that. Environmental impact. We know that, I would say that we should probably consider it. To what extent, I think, is the question. And I don't know your thoughts on that, but someone in the audience said, MIT and others are studying this, and they're talking about, what the environmental impact is. Again, what are your thoughts on just different, like, how do we think about what we're considering with the environmental impact of AI?
I think any technology is going to fall under this for sure. When we're talking about, specific chips and where they're coming from and the resources that we might find, the storage of information is certainly an issue. Where that's all being stored and how that's being managed is certainly an issue. I think that in considering, the environmental aspect of it, I think that there's a lot that could be done good on any topic, right? I always got, my mom would contact me and she's like, I heard VR is bad because this is going to happen. It's going to take over our world. I was like, Mom, with every technology, there's a way we can use this and do it well. And there's a way we can do it wrong. And we can make a lot of mistakes with that. So it really comes back to your intent on using this technology. So, how you're thinking through, the impact of, is this something that I want to invest my time and energy into? Is this something that I think needs to be limited in the amount of time I'm spending in here, or I would encourage others to spend in here? All of those factors, I think, are going to be personal. I don't know if anybody's going to come out with like, this is the stamp of approval across the board. I think you're going to have companies that are looking at it from a profit standpoint. You're going to have consumers looking at it from a time management or opportunity to possibly, improve skills or benefit financially through, advancing their careers. So you have kind of these attention here where everybody's coming at it from a different angle. and everybody has their own personal preference, and they might minimize one thing and maximize another thing. And I think that's going to be on a personal level on how they handle that. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer, but I think in all technologies, we need to think about balance 100% of the time. The moment we say all in or not in at all is a problem. We need to always have attention happening in that balance with our own personal lives, our classroom lives, our students' lives, our community lives, all of the above, balancing how we are going to interact with any technology in a healthy way and in a way that essentially keeps things under some sort of accountability, and keeping things under management, and somebody calling things out when things don't look right and having an opportunity to have a voice in that. So yeah, I guess that's pretty broad in my response there, but I do think, again, you're probably going to come back to a personal preference in a lot of these.
Okay. No, I think that's great. And we have a 10-minute warning, so I'm going to kind of combine a couple of our. We'll probably have time for about two more questions, unless anything comes in from the audience. We've had a lot of audience questions, which is fantastic. The next question, though, I'm going to ask is around the professional learning, professional support. We've had some questions around that. What are some professional learning resources that you recommend for helping teachers use AI practically, safely, and ethically that don't overburden existing time constraints that teachers already face?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we have a lot of things happening out there for resources. I don't think we're limited by no means to training. A lot of the times it's free. It's available, like we're doing right now, a virtual aspect that you can hop on and gather some information, make some decisions, maybe even think thoroughly about how this is going to expand into schools and how you can support that. But in considering any of this technology, we need to also keep in mind that we need to be prepared for what's coming up ahead. And I can't say anybody does that perfectly. You're going to have resources certainly from like Digital Promise, and I know that I've captured a lot from there as well. And you're going to have companies come in with their perspective of training that is going to purely look from their product, if you will. You're going to have those experts come in with their perspectives to say, what they think is going to be important. And here's a list of resources to check out. So I would say you're not in a place where that's hard to find. There's a ton out there. But I do think that how you go about finding those resources might have to be a little bit strategic based upon your circumstances. So if I am coming in and I know my school's adopting a new tool, and that is something we all need to be prepared for, and that AI tool is something we all have to be, trained on, and we understand the concepts of privacy. We're having to get trained on, the digital citizenship aspect of it, all of those things that we're having to consider in that. I mean, my focus might be that product. It might be their professional development that I'm taking into account. If that isn't the case, and I'm looking for, some resources that it's a little bit not as biased, right, on their perspective and approach, then maybe I'm going for somebody that I trust as an educator or an influencer out there sharing on the education space that's had experience in this space before, that has the experience as a classroom teacher, relatable. I mean, I could think of several people off the top of my head that are out there sharing regularly, that have books out there on it, that go out and speak, that do webinars, content all the time. So I would really look to those people that you respect and value and see what kind of resources they bring to. Kelly would be a great example as well, right? So she's sharing on this technology. Her experience in this is awesome. So you can go and say, what kind of resources is Kelly out there sharing? So I can go through that process and find people that I trust. And I think that's a good approach as well. But it really comes back to like, why PD? What is your ultimate goal and objectives in doing that professional development? And then really determining where to find those resources at the end of the day that's going to best support you for that success.
Perfect. Yeah, I think it's great insight of asking that why and fitting the specific needs for what you have, because one size doesn't fit all with
True.
anything, right? Technology, PD, any of it. Okay, well, I am getting our last just a couple minutes left. I'm going to do a wrap up here in just a minute, but before we go, any final advice that you have, Jamie, for educators navigating this new AI landscape?
I would say do this with friends. Be part of a community. I think that I've seen friends really connect and engage through community in this way, finding and sparking this new enthusiasm together. I think doing any technology on your own is going to get you so far, but when you have a community of people to connect with and learn from and grow, that's going to be significant. That's going to really be a game changer. Having the people to ask questions from and having the humans to connect with and build from there is going to be just as important as having the resource of AI itself. So my recommendation is don't do it in silo. Whether that be in your own school community, whether that be through social media and connecting with people, having a community that you can go back to and share ideas and ask for help in the process, those people are going to make a tremendous difference.
That is a fantastic segue into the wrap up here. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. And as Jamie said, find a community, find a friend, find someone. And we have a community. So here on LinkedIn, we have our HP AI Education Exchange. Would love for you to join that. There is a community there who are exploring different resources, talking, lots of things for you there. You can find our panelist, Jaime Donally, on LinkedIn and X, and we have our team will be dropping that social media contact information into the chat. Please stay tuned for our next Ask Me Anything on April 24th with Dr. Pati Ruiz on AI research, policy, and ethics. So again, thank you all so much. Jamie, thank you so much for coming in. As always, it was lovely to hang out with you and hear your wonderful expertise and insight on innovative technologies. And I hope everyone has a lovely day.
Thank you.